Okay, so shall we get started? Hari Om, everyone. Hopefully this will be the last session for the third chapter. Let us see how much we're going to cover. I have quite a few things prepared. We'll see. Om. 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 Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Mavit Rishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Drutavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandadhami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostu te vyasa vishala buddhe Pulla ravindayata patra netra Yena tvaya bharata taila purnaha Prajvalito jnanamayah pradipaha Prapanna parijataya Totra vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamritaduhe Namaha Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tva Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So welcome everyone. We are finishing the chapter number 3, Karma Yoga. And as I've said before, it is probably one of the most practical chapters of great universal value. It was very important then. It is also important now, and it will be important in the future as well. And now let us just go into our reflection time for the last 3 shlokas before we finish the very last one. So it's going to be 39, 40, and 41. And as I mentioned earlier, today we will finish the chapter with the last shloka 43. And after that, we will do a summary of the entire chapter. And this time, unlike the other 2 chapters, I've tried to put a lot of pictures. So hopefully this will be like watching a movie on Bhagavad Gita chapter 3. Well, not to the extent of, with the glamour and all that of a movie, but at least we'll see chapter 3 in pictures. And then finally, we will chant the whole chapter 3 as well. So shloka number 39 essentially is Avritam Jnanametena Jnanino Nitya Vairina Kamarupena Kaunteya Dushpurena Nalenacha. Any thoughts on when it says Avritam, which is it's covering Jnanam, and it is in the form, and what is it that is covering this wisdom? It is that desire. And this desire is also not a simple enemy. Like, here it says it's an enemy, right? So the desire is an enemy, but it is a very insatiable desire. I mean, it's just something that doesn't let us sit quietly. So any thoughts on this shloka? Any practical examples you can think of? Have you ever been in any situation where you were overcome by, wanting to have a lot more than you can handle? That's the whole idea here, which is what it's trying to say. So you see how he compares it to Analena, fire. And we gave this example of how, when you add ghee to the fire burns even more, right? So that's how our desires are. Desires really have no full stop at all. All the time we are consumed by wanting to do something or the other. And that's what he's trying to show here. Okay, let's move on to 40. Intriyani mano buddhihi asya adhishthanam uchyate etaihi vimohayati eshaha jnanam avritya dehinam. Does anybody want to attempt summarizing what the shloka means? What do you think, Suvarna? Any thoughts from your side? Or
the location of desires, it's like it's the first sentence. That is what the senses, the mind, the intellect. It is the BMI. We are so caught up in this body that whatever is associated with the body is what we are going forward. We are looking at. We don't look anything beyond this body. Oh, my hand is hurting. Oh, my head is hurting. No, we don't say that. It's just a head. It's okay. You take a painkiller and you'll be fine. We don't say that. We are hung up on that. Oh, my head is hurting, kind of a thing. It's like, no, we are so. That's how. This is at a very bare basic thing, but that's how I.
Yeah, beautiful. I think you hit, you spoke at the level of the body, and how that pain that you were saying just now, we get so consumed by that. Oh my God, this is hurting me and everything, right? And if we extend that now to the mind, so at the mind, it's like, oh my God, somebody told me this, something to me, and my mind cannot just my mind can just not get out of that mode, of somebody telling me something and hurting me or something, right? Or it could be praise. So then a mind also gets consumed with something like that. And then the intellect also, right? So all these things, what you pointed out, which either hurts us or praises us, that is covering something else. So because our mind, our energy is consumed on all that, it prevents us from truly understanding who I am. So much so that I end up thinking that I am this body, mind, and intellect all the time. Right?
Yeah. We are so stuck up on the body that we are unwilling to go beyond it. That's the whole problem.
Exactly. Anybody else have any thoughts on this? So he calls us as the Dehinam because we are dwelling in our body. It's almost like, it's like as if I'm defined by the house in which I'm living in. It would be so funny to say that I'm living at F124 Annanagar. I am F124 Annanagar. It almost sounds like, in India, the police people used to be called like that, hey, 504, 206, come here, So it's like calling me with that name, F124, That's how we have allowed ourselves to be. And in that sense, we have made ourselves as if we are dwelling in this small, finite house. But we are much more than that, which is that infinite. And this desire is covering that aspect of it. So then the next shloka was talking about, in spite of knowing all this, it is so difficult for us to consciously change this. And this is as an example of this elephant which is going around. You have the mahout, or the person who's trying to control, but the elephant nevertheless is moving towards the bananas, which it likes a lot. So the next shloka was talking about, then we need to find out exactly, knowing that the problem is at the three levels of body, mind, and intellect. But where do I start? What is the place for this? And that is where the shloka 41 was talking about, which is saying that tasmat tvam indriyani adav niyamya bharatarshaba papmanam prajahi hi enam jnana vijnana nashanam. So he's saying, if you have to start somewhere, why don't you start at the senses level? And here I'm reminded of a very beautiful example of Eknath Easwaran. In one of his books, one of his things, he talks about how he had this great liking for cashew nuts. He's from Kerala, and he had this liking for cashew nuts. And then when he came to this, I'm saying this country, which is US, when he came there, he couldn't resist getting these box of Planters cashew nuts or something. And before he knew, his hands were going right into the box of cashew nuts and putting one after the other. He didn't even realize he was doing it. So our senses are so strong that it takes us to that place. So the only way to kill is controlling the senses. So starting from the senses, disciplining the senses, that is the aspect which is being talked here. Tasmat adav niyamya bharatarshaba papmanam prajahi hi enam and jnana vijnana nashanam. So here, prajahi hi enam, Swami Tejomananda actually breaks it up, from the bhashya of Bhagavan Shankaracharya ji, how this prajahi enam, first of all, we have to give up, tyaga, and then to kill it. And that is the aspect, is where he's saying that aspect of giving up and then killing it is the only way we can destroy that desire. And because it is something which is the destroyer of jnanam and vijnanam. Jnanam is the knowledge which we get from the scriptures, by reading, by listening. That is jnanam. But vijnanam is the experience of it. After I've received something, how I try to, through shravanam, nididhyasanam, mananam and nididhyasanam, when I try to make the knowledge my own, that becomes a vijnanam. So both jnanam and vijnanam is actually destroyed if I'm not careful. So then shloka 42 goes to, then how am I really going to totally go beyond these desires? And that's the aspect where we brought in the Ratha Kalpana, Ratha Jivanam, that is the shloka from Kathopanishad. And my apologies, last time I had it very small and I think it would have been hard to read. And also one other, I had made a mistake in the in one of them, which is I made a mistake of saying that the passenger is the ego, but the passenger is Atman. So just wanted to correct those two. So you see this example of the chariot, which shows the 5 horses, which represents the 5 senses. It goes on the road, which the road represents the objects. And you have the sense organs being controlled by the reins, which is the mind here. And the mind itself is in control by the buddhi. Now, this whole thing is our BMI, but Atman is an independent witness to the whole thing. So Atman is everywhere, Brahman is everywhere, but here we are referring it as Atman because we are referring to an individual Dehinam, which is an individual Jiva here. So we are showing this here where the Atman, we are the Atman, we are the witness, but we get involved with this BMI equipment here. And so that's the significance of this. So the shloka talks about how to control desire by first starting with the body and then progressing, of course, to mind and intellect in such a way that everything is in control. But there is something even beyond that, and that is Atman. So when I identify myself with Atman, which is my true nature, then I'm completely off the aspect of the desires. So that's the idea of this Ratha here. So finally coming to shloka number 43. Evam buddhe param buddhva. Evam buddhe param buddhva. Samstabhyatmanamatmana. Samstabhyatmanamatmana. Jahi shatrum mahabaho. Jahi shatrum mahabaho. Kamarupam durasadam. Kamarupam durasadam. So he says, thus, evam, buddhehe, with the intellect, param buddhva, know him who is beyond the intellect also. Param, which is beyond. So know who that which is beyond the intellect. Samsthabhya atmanam atmana. Atmanam atmana. So restraining oneself by the mind. And I'm sure some of you would be already reminded of the 6th chapter, which is Uddhare Datmanatmanam Atmanam Avasadayet. The only way we can control this aspect of the desires and everything is only by restraining the lower self by the higher self. And that is what is Atmanam Atmana. So restraining the lower self by the bigger self. Jahi Shatrum, Shatru referring to the enemy. So Jahi Shatrum, slay the enemy. O Mahabaho, referring to Arjuna again, telling Arjuna, you are the one who's so mighty armed, you have the capacity, now you just do it. And what is he trying to kill? The Shatru. Who is the Shatru here? The Shatru is the Kama Rupam. The Shatru is in the form of the desire, and who is Durasadam, which is so difficult. It's so difficult to conquer this. But it is possible and needs a lot of effort, and that is done by controlling the body, mind, and intellect, the desires in all these areas. So that is the shloka here. And so conquer the enemy within only by you. So this brings the end of the 43rd shloka. So I'm going to stop this presentation here, and I will bring the presentation, which is the summary now. And after the summary, we will do the Okay, so, I forgot. This is the summary, by the way. So let us look at the whole 3rd chapter summary. And At the end of it, would love to know from you what shlokas appeal to you the most. Okay, as I go through the summary, you can tell me at the end of it. Okay, so we started in, actually it was the, it was a lecture number 36. So today we are on lecture number 52. So lecture number 36, we started with first trying to say that the chapter Karma Yoga, the chapter Bhagavad, chapter 3 is focused on Karma Yoga, the yoga of action. And in this yoga of action, we talked about how action being the most important, which is very fundamental to our life. So it is important for us to recognize that the quality of action is very, very important. We focus on quantity today. We focus our minds. We are so stressed out, doing so many things one after the other, that we forget that we have to really work on so many different aspects of action, which is having a good, whether we have the aptitude for whatever we are doing, and whether we have the right attitude on how we can actually make sure that the way I am trying to act is the right way, which is what chapter 3 is all about. So all that is what the chapter 3 was talking about. And in this, we spoke about this aspect of give and take through this thing called Yajna spirit. So this is a chapter, one slide, which is what I showed in the beginning of chapter 3. And I'm showing this again at the end of chapter 3 to show this is in one slide, everything which chapter 3 is about. So we did the Yajna spirit. We learned a lot from nature, which talks about give and take. And as we go through, we'll talk a little more. Then we talked about what truly is my inner calling, which again ties into action. So the Swadharma aspect was, we discussed that. Then we talked about Prakriti, the nature, what is our nature. And in this, we talked about Sattva, Rajas. We touched upon it. We will be discussing more of this in future chapters. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. And then finally, we talked about the desire, or this aspect of desire, how to avoid desire and everything. So this is in one slide, the summary of it. Now let's go into the details. So if you recall, chapter 3 started with the question of Arjuna to Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna had just finished giving him one of the most lengthiest chapters of Bhagavad Gita, which is chapter 2, with about 72 shlokas. And in that, he expounded about self-realization. He talked about the goal of human life. And then Arjuna, he is like confused. Okay, wait a minute. Then should I not just go to the Himalayas? Should I not just leave everything? What are you telling me, O Krishna? That's what he asked. And we saw the shloka, which is Jaisi Chet Karmanaste Mata Buddhir Janardhana Tatkim Karmani Ghore Ma Niyojayasi Keshava. Why are you really asking me to fight this terrible war? O Krishna, tell me. That was his thing. So he's really perplexed. He's very confused. And he says, hey, Krishna, do me a favor. Will you tell me exactly what you mean? Because your talk is very confusing to me, Vyamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tadekam vada nishchitya yena shreyoha mamapnayam. Tell me for sure, what is the one way that I can attain my goal? That was his thing. So then Krishna is trying to say, well, Arjuna, I can definitely explain to you, but I'm not sure you would really understand. But, why don't I give it a try? So he starts then at that point with saying that, Lokesmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta maya nagha jnana yogena sankhyanam karma yogena yoginam. So Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna, yes, I know in the chapter 2, I gave you this whole background of self-realization, but I also told you that, what you have to do? Karma Yoga. So that is what I told you, because you have all the skills of doing Karma Yoga, and besides, you're really not there yet, you know. So he says in the world there are two types of people. So there are two types. One type of people are the people who really are seeking knowledge for the sake of knowledge, whereas there are other people who are on the path of action. So for them, the path of action is the most suitable one. And of course, I'm going to tell you what the path of action really means, because this particular chapter is all about the path of action. So it is like learning to ride a bike and enjoying a ride on a bike. That's what we used as an example. So there are two different things. One is, you know, I have to really understand what the bike is. I have to learn how to ride it. And then once I've done that, I can forget it. I can forget what the bike is. I can forget all the mechanics that went into riding the bike, and I can just enjoy the ride, right? So here we said, you know, there are a few things about overcoming fear, learning to balance, learning to brake, learning to steer, and learning to maintain. All this is part of riding the bike. And this is in somewhat what Karma Yoga does for us. We still have so many aspects that we need to work within our system. And that aspect is all these things. We actually tied, if you remember, to Karma Yoga in many ways, each one of these aspects. And so we are at this stage where we need to really work on these things. So that's what the path of action and the path of knowledge was. So having said this, Krishna, you know, continued on. He said, "Na karmanam anarambhat naishkarmyam purushoshnute nacha sanyasana deva siddhim samadhikachati." You know, he's trying to tell Arjuna, I know you really don't want to do anything, all these things which I listed out on the path of action, but guess what? You just cannot go there yet, because that area which I'm talking about, the self-realization, it cannot be had, it cannot be done by just sitting and meditating. That is, na karmanam, not by any non-performance of action. I cannot just sit or do that. Also, another thing is just not by mere renunciation. You know, you cannot say, I'm a sannyasi and just this one. Even that is not possible. So how so? We will see that. So to do that, we explained first the aspects that what is really actionlessness. Okay. So that naishkarmyam is a word. So naishkarmyam basically is that aspect is of not having any desire itself. Now, how can it be that we don't have desires when I have a lot of vasanas? So it is an aspect where I have, you know, total control over all my vasanas. There's no vasanas, which itself is actually coming from ignorance. So when I'm ignorant of my own true nature and I think I'm something else, then what happens is whatever associated with that something else takes over. In this case, when I think that I'm the body, mind, and intellect, then I have all these vasanas which need to be satisfied. And in order to do that, I have the vasanas which lead to desires. And then I try to satisfy these desires, which is how, and the way I feel I need to satisfy desires is only by acting it out, by really fulfilling it out. So that's the thing that I'm aware of. And that's what Lord Krishna is explaining. So we saw this thing about how quitting to act, and that is that first line of the shloka, quitting to act is really not allowed. And second thing is you cannot quit, nor can you stop yourself from not starting anything. That is our true nature. You know, we just cannot sit in one place. We always want to be doing something or the other. And that is what is said in this shloka number 5. Nahi kaschit kshanam, even for a moment, it is impossible for us to sit there. Not even for a moment can I ever remain in the state of actionlessness, naishkarmyam. Okay. Karyate hyavasha karma sarva prakriti jair gunaihi. for we are helplessly made to act, all by the gunas, the qualities which are born of nature. Like, for example, I know I have this person going all around, we are like in this hamster wheel. We feel we are running from one obligation to another constantly. And I'm sorry, this picture got kind of obscured here. It's all about, it's so difficult for us to say no. So people keep piling things on us. And then we finally get stressed because we really cannot do everything here. And we have constantly somebody who's demanding our attention. So all these things forces us to be doing something or the other. So this is why, Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna, Karmendriyani sanyamya ya aste manasa smaran indriyarthan vimudhatma mithyacharasa uchyate. Uchyate meaning that it is said that, if you try to do something like that, which is, you're sitting on meditation and the teacher is going through the guided meditation, but then our mind is all over, somebody's thinking about the Bahamas, or somebody's thinking about a cruise, and somebody's thinking about the project. And that's what he's trying to tell here, merely restricting the organs of action. He who sits thinking in his mind of the sense objects, such a person is actually called a hypocrite, a mithyachara. That's the idea which is shown here. And so Krishna, continues to say, this is the reason why we all do all this, is that a mind is full of these things called desires. So we need to address that aspect of it. Like, I'm either thinking about my kids, what are they doing? I'm thinking about my work. How can I get a better job? And now New Year is coming. I need to set up my New Year resolutions. I have to find how I can lose some weight here. Or maybe some mundane things like going to a laundry or a grocery or, or whatnot. So many different aspects. All these things are clouding our mind, which prevents us from going through, right? So, but then there is hope here. Krishna is saying, don't worry, there is hope here. He says, Yahatu indriyani manasa niyamya arabhate Arjuna. Whoever with his mind brings his senses under control. So you see, we finished with the senses and now we had started with the senses. So I wanted to bring this summary here by bringing the senses here. So he says, so start with Arjuna. He's telling Arjuna, start with your senses. And I think it makes perfect sense, actually. It has to, of course. I know you're going to say, of course, it has to make sense here. So you have, so start with the senses. Yes, tva indriyani manasa. And then who does karma yoga through his organs of action while remaining unattached, he indeed excels. So start at the senses here. And, not to, this is just another cartoon to show that, don't think about when I'm sitting in meditation about whether I'm hungry, I want chips, am I really in the moment? All this, let's try to go beyond that. And so we have in the shloka number 7, he tries to tell him that, he finishes basically to say that since mentally you're really not there, so that is why I'm really prescribing karma yoga for you. Because the other thing about karma yoga is not only are you not there, but if you do this slowly, that will actually remove those desires out of your mind. It will tend to purify your mind. And once your mind is purified, that will allow the knowledge to sink in. So with that, he says, Niyatam kuru karmatvam, karma jyayo hya karmanaha, sharira yatra pichate, na prasidhyeda karmanaha. So the way to do it is, instead of going towards fulfilling your desires, try to see truly what is your skill set, for example. What is it that you have a role in the society? And whatever the role is, do to the best of your whatever that is possible by you. So he says, Niyatam Kuru Karmatvam, perform your duty, focus only on that. And you will see how many of these ideas, they again come a little differently in this chapter. So he says, perform that because action is superior to inaction. And then he reminds him that even your own body, which has been given to you to realize the Sharira, in order to maintain the body, you have to do some action. I have to do some yoga. I have to do some exercise. I have to make sure I feed the body properly with the right food. I have to make sure that I take this body to sleep and make the body sleep. So I need to do all that. So for all this also, just perform the right things at the right time. Don't overexert yourself. Don't stress yourself. So that's the aspect what he's trying to say here. So then the question might come is, then what really are my duties? Am I really fulfilling my duties? Am I really spending my time in quality jobs here? So this is why our Shastras, they define these, what exactly is duties, in 5 different ways. One of them is Nitya Karma, which I have to do every day. Whether I sleep the right amount, I get up, I brush my teeth, I take a shower, I eat 3 times a day, and then I eat the right amount of food. All that is part of Nitya Karma. And along with that, my duty as the role that I play as a daughter, as a wife, as a mother, all those duties, and then also my duties at my work, in my community, that is all Nitya Karma. Then duties for special occasions, we talked about Naimitika Karma, which is what I do on an occasional basis, whether I have to attend a wedding or a birthday or anything. That's all special occasions. Then fulfilling certain desires, and this is another kind of action, which is Kamya Karma. And then Nishiddha Karma, which is forbidden, and Prayachita Karma, which is karmas which I need to perform in case I did something where I hurt somebody or whatever. So among all these, the 2 most important ones are Nitya Karma and Naimitika Karma. This is the aspect that Krishna talks here. Then we talked about already the maintenance of the body. So then further on, Krishna tells Arjuna about how, let's try to see how we can learn more. So he says, Yajna arthat karmanaha anyatra, lokaha ayam karma bandhanaha, tadartam karma kaunteya, mukta sangha samachara. He says, the reason why we have to focus on the action is that the world itself is action-oriented. If you look at nature and everything, the world is bound by actions. But make sure that whatever actions we perform, it has to be Mukta Sangaha Samachara. Let it be free of all attachment. Let it be free of understanding what is in it for me. Let me do it for the sake of the action alone. So 2 things here. He says, the world is, there are many actions here, but they're bound by actions. But those actions have to be free from all attachment. And so from here, we saw this aspect of yajna. The yajna spirit was introduced in shlokas 10 to 13. And sahayajna prajasrishtva puro vacha prajapatihi anena prasavishvyadvam eshavo svishta kamaduk. So he talks about how when the mankind were created, along with that, every human being was given a gift. And what is a gift? It is the kama dukkha, which is this aspect of yajna spirit. And the yajna spirit was given as a parting gift. And we discussed a lot about what yajna spirit is, which is nothing but teamwork, which is teamwork where everyone sinks their own ego and works together. And this is how it happens in nature. So we see how the plants, they give out, the whole aspect of the photosynthesis cycle, which happens. the respiration cycle which happens, all this works together in such a way that there is a teamwork, and that is really what Yajna spirit is. And he talks about further on to say, Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantuvaha parasparam bhavayantaha shreya paramavapsyata. Very, again, another important word here, parasparam bhavayantaha. Everyone works together, nourishing one another. One goes beyond, or one climbs the ladder of realization. So even here, the gods. So the idea being that when I take care of the environment, then the environment takes care of me. So this is the whole idea of respecting nature. We did that. And we had a brief discussion on the Puranic story of Devas and Asuras, and how the Devas were helpful towards each other, not the Asuras. And then Krishna reminds him about then what happens if you don't follow this cycle, follow the cycle of yajna, follow the cycle of helping and nurturing each other. Then he says, Ishtan bogan hi vo devaha dasyante yajna bhavitaha taidartana pradayabhyaha yo bhunte stena evasaha. So stena, if I don't do this, then I'm nothing but a thief here. That's the idea behind the shloka. And we saw this, Lord Krishna reminding everyone about what it means. Then we saw Yajna Shishta Shina Santaha Muchyante Sarvakhil Bishaihi Bunjate Te Tvagam Papaha Ye Pachantyatma Karanat. So he says, what is the right way to do it then? So the whole idea is righteous one who eats the remnants of the yajna are freed from all sins. So the idea being that one needs to always make sure that everyone is fed, everyone is happy, and then and only then really enjoy, partake for ourselves. But he says, but those sinful ones are those who cook only for their sake. But if I'm a person who thinks only that me and myself have to be happy, then I'm really a thief again. So that is sinful. So here we talked about the 5 ways in which we can follow this particular one, follow this yajna spirit. We talked about one is our debt to our forefathers, because without them, we wouldn't have been here. So let us be thankful, let us be grateful to our forefathers. Then we saw Bhuta Yajna, let us be grateful to all the creatures who are there to help this ecology, the ecological system remain fresh. You know, in different ways, different creatures are doing that, and we don't pay attention to many of those. You know, even the small ant, when we see which is going around, that ant is trying to take one mud particle in its mouth, and it's taking out and it's cleaning the environment. We see the dogs and cats. We see, I want to say even the mosquitoes here. I want to understand actually how the mosquitoes are also helping, but in every way possible, every creature is really helping the environment. Then Manusha Yajna, which is a community service, what we do to each other. Then the Brahma Rishi Yajna, which is again the idea of being grateful to the creator, the rishis, for giving us the knowledge. That is Brahma Yajna. So everything is nothing but a yajna for which we have to be grateful. So then we saw this whole cosmic wheel, how it works. Again, the idea for bringing the cosmic wheel and to explain about this yajna spirit is to show how we are all interconnected, and to show the gratitude, the compassion. Everything is actually brought out here so beautifully. So the cosmic wheel, we saw this with Annad Bhavanti Bhutani Parjanyat Anna Sambhavaha Yajnat Bhavati Parjanyaha Yajna Karma Samudbhavaha. I'm just looking at the time, it's already 7:48, so I might skip the saying of the shlokas, but focus on the summary here. So we saw the cosmic wheel of action, how the actions lead to, the rain, the food, the beings. We all are connected in one form or the other. That was shown in this shloka. And then again, Krishna is saying about how it is only that person who recognizes the true nature and is satisfied by the self is the person who is free from any kind of action. Because Arjuna would have asked at this point, you tell me about how I can get out of this cycle. So Krishna is telling him the only way you can get out of this cycle is if you are totally content in yourself. If you're totally content in yourself and you understand your true nature, then you don't have to get into this cycle. And that is what was said in this shloka number 16. And then in the 17th shloka, that it's only those great people, the sages. So then the question is, why are the sages are exempted from this? And the idea is that because the sages don't depend on anything at all. So since they don't depend on anything, so why would they even get into this cycle, right? So that was the idea here. Because such a person knows that he or she is happiness himself. So therefore, he or she is exempt from it. So there is no doership or enjoyship. So beautifully, those two shlokas talked about that person of realization, that person of perfection, who we want to be here. We discussed some things here about the story of the Mexican fisherman or the Indian fisherman. And so then Krishna again tells him, so that is the reason I'm telling you that try to act without any attachment itself. And here he gave some examples of great people like Janaka. And he said these people, they acted in such a way that anything and everything they did was only for the sake of loka sangraham, or protection of the masses. And then one of the most beautiful shlokas here, he talked about that such a person to reach that level of greatness is possible only when the person does the right things. The person is always walking the talk. And we gave this example of Mahatma Gandhi, who through his actions really showed what it means. And only such great people can be called as great because they do things in a way that they set the bar or the standards for other people to achieve. And so then Lord Krishna gives himself as an example in shloka number 22, where he says that at the end of the day, Arjuna, I really don't have anything to do here, but yet I continue to do it for the sake of the world. So, and then he says, if I didn't do this, then the entire world will come to a halt. Nobody will know exactly what is to be done. And that is why I do it. So here, the idea behind this shloka 24 is to say that each one of us have our own duties, our own roles, our own prakriti, which we need to be in tune with. And that is, we need to be in tune with truly who we are and perform things in the matter of yajna. So that is what was discussed here. And then the shloka number 25 was essentially about trying to tell us that every individual are different. So there might be some people who may not necessarily know the whole Bhagavad Gita or anything, or may not necessarily know this, but we need to act in such a way. That's the message, at least what I'm showing here. The message is we need to be compassionate. We need to know how to work with people and help everyone grow. So that's the difference between a common and great here. The wise people, they act without attachment, desiring only the welfare of the world, and need to act with the people who may not be. So that's the difference in attitude between the two kinds of people. Then shloka number 26 was all about compassionate leadership, which I guess I probably misspoke here. This shloka is actually what it is all about. which is the wise people need to engage people without making the other person feel bad. Na buddhi bedam janayet, ajnanam karma sanginam, joshayet sarva karmani, vidwan yukta samacharan. And then we talked about really how the doership comes about. So the doership, which is the ego. So there's a little bit of discussion we did here. And I'm sure you remember this cartoon here. I removed your ego in terms of that was clogging your reality. What a beautiful Advaitic Vedanta shloka here, cartoon, I think. So what is it about a Prakriti which makes us do what we do is basically the three qualities. We talked about Sattva, Rajas, Tamas. And this is what drives us, which was discussed here. But then I have to, again, stay away from it and be a witness to the whole thing. So it is only the gunas which are acting. I'm a witness to the whole thing. So that is what was discussed in 28. And then here, it talks about, again, an extension of that idea. Those deluded by gunas cannot help being attached to their functions. Those of imperfect knowledge should not be unsettled by those of perfect knowledge. Again, it's a similar theme as two shlokas before. And then we come to another very important shloka, which is Mai Sarvani Karmani Sanyasyadhyatma Chetasa Nirashihi Nirmamo Bhutva Yudhyasva Vikatajvaraha. The three things, if you remember, we talked about the secret of success, on how to focus, be in the moment, and forget about the past. Don't get too excited about the present, and don't worry too much about the future, and just do it. And then we saw the aspect about Krishna telling Arjuna about how this teaching is so very powerful and to practice it. And he says, even just reading, just practicing Bhagavad Gita is enough. And from here, then he says, in spite of all this, we find that people are sometimes unable to practice. Why is that? The reason is because we have something which is our nature. We've been in this body from so many previous janmas. So our way of doing things, we are very stubborn sometimes in doing things what we believe in. So it's very hard for us to really change here. And what is it about us that makes us difficult to change? It is our very strong likes and dislikes. And that is what was said in shloka number 34 about, we have these strong likes and dislikes, and therefore we need to avoid this. We need to first recognize what it is. And that is the only way we can actually avoid it. And he talks to them about being the highway robbers. And I just put here this one to show that when I have some strong likes and dislikes, then I find that really affects me. So what goes around comes around here. So whatever I don't like will always, follow me. Whatever I like will go away from me. So I need to be constantly aware of this aspect here. And then another very important shloka here, coming to shloka number 35, where Krishna then reminds us that the way to get over this likes and dislikes again is by focusing on our own duty, our own whatever I'm meant to do this. So, and that is where we had this, we talked about knowing our aptitude and excelling. Each one of us have our own skill set and our own passion. And that is where I need to take my journey and use that as a conduit, if you will, to the goal of self-realization. So that is the aspect. And from here, the shlokas 36 to 41 is saying that, because Arjuna then asks this question, okay, you have told me all this. Now tell me, why is it in spite of knowing this knowledge, what is it that prevents people? What is it that makes people do things what they are sometimes guilty of. And so we had a discussion of sins and the merits part of it. And finally, we saw how that which leads to sin is basically the desires. And we discussed this about the three kinds of desires, which is the sattvic, rajasic, and tamasic desires. And interestingly, one point I wanted to mention here with the fetus covered by the womb is, many times the fetus is so covered, we don't even know that the fetus is there, right? Whereas here you can see the dust or you can see the smoke. So this is like how we don't even know we have all these desires. So the desires are so covered. So we have to really look within ourselves to see what is my true desires and take care of it. So that, and then we talked about already 39, about how these desires are a cover for the wisdom which prevents me from knowing who I am. And then we saw the self-management part of it. Today we discussed that. And we also saw these desires are so insatiable and they come one after the other, just like this box of tissues. And finally, we saw the chariot example, how the desires are in all body, mind, and intellect. And we need to identify ourselves with Atman. And that is one way, that is one sure way of getting rid of all the desires or being in control of the desires and not allow the desires to overpower us and take away the knowledge that which is really my true nature. And finally, we saw that in the shloka number 43, the only way I can do this is by meditation, by understanding truly who I am. And that is what he's saying, Atmanam, which is conquering oneself by oneself. And this, in order to come to this stage, first we have to really understand what the problems we are facing, seeing how much we can be in control, and finally doing the meditation itself. So this, it's already 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock for me here. I know it's 9:30 for you, Eastern Standard Time. But I'm going to open it up now a little bit to ask you what shlokas appeal to you the most, if you have anything, if you want to share at this point. And if you're not able to chant today, that's okay. I will chant in our next session. So let me stop my sharing here and ask you what you think. Anyone wants to share? Sorry, I really went through it quite fast here, but I wanted to make sure I give you the flow of thought through the whole chapter 3.
Thank you. That was very nice. It was the way you took us point by point. It was, the summarization was very good. Thank you. That was very good. And the one thing that it's the duty part where they say, where we have talked about the daily duties, getting wrapped up. It's good to perform. It is important for us to perform the duties, but we get so wrapped up in those duties that we don't realize, or I'm having difficulty going beyond it. It's like duties is the whole world and there's something beyond it too. That is something that is taking a while to get to, but hopefully. So
yeah.
thank you.
But what was your favorite shloka though, Suvarna? Was it about that Swadharma part of it? Was that?
Yeah, because that was something that really it hit me. It was like, okay, this is what it is like, knowing my own true nature. What is it that I'm driving for? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What is my purpose of sitting in this class and listening to you? Why am I doing that? What is the purpose of it? Thinking about it. So that really, I connected with that.
Very good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Sunitha. It was really nice summary. My favorite was ninth shloka, in which you say do the karma just to free from attachment, like Krishna Arpanamastu. Do everything for that. So that was really inspiring. And if we remember that whenever we do everything and do selflessly, and so it can help us a lot.
Very nice. Thank you, Meenu.
No, thank you. Very nice summary.
Thank you. Avinash, any shloka for you?
Yeah, along those lines, yajna spirit you talked about, and also the teamwork, So,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Very nice.
Thank you.
Hi, Sunitha.
Hi, Usha.
Great job with the entire chapter as well as summary.
Thank you.
So, yeah, my favorite shlokas, I just don't have one. I like the part of the yajna spirit, especially the 11 to 13, those shlokas. How you have to be respectful of nature and how not to be selfish and just doing like cooking for your family or whatever, that sort of thing. Being able to spread your wealth and your, not just your wealth, but your attitude, for the benefit of the community. And I also like that shloka about that Yatol Bhe Lavritam. That is one of my favorite shlokas. So,
yeah. Beautiful. Thank you, Usha, for sharing. Anybody else? Meena, did you have any favorites?
Yes, so thank you for the summary. It was so wonderful to listen the whole chapter 3. Mine is, everything is my favorite, but one is where Lord Krishna says, surrender everything to me and I will take care of it. Shloka number 30, secret of success, surrender everything to me. So that's the ultimate I think for everyone. Yes.
And there are some of these shlokas which maybe next week or the next time when we meet, I will put some of these, which if you can only memorize it with the meanings, it's amazing how, and if you can even chant this every day, literally that really helps us with our actions. As much as we chant many other shlokas, but some of these I feel really helps us in a transactional world immediately, because it reminds us really who we are and how I should be performing my duty. And this particular shloka that you pointed out, Meena, which is 30, is one of them. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya dhyatma chetasa nirashihi nirmamo bhutva. Those 3 words, free from hope, nirashihi, free from hope, nirmamo, without, that nirmamo, and then free from, egoism. Exactly. And then free from any chanchalam in your mind.
Mental tumor.
Yes, exactly.
It's so wonderful, the 30th sloka, meaning if you go each and every word meaning, it's absolutely fabulous. My God.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for
sharing.
Thank
you so much. Yeah.
Anybody else? Madhuri and Vijay? Anybody? Or Jayashri?
Thanks, Sunitha ji. Wonderful presentation. There's so many slokas which are really meaningful, but we just have to, like you're saying, understand it and then chant and practice it daily.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anybody else want to share?
Hari Om Sunitha ji, this is Pramila. I just want to gratitude for for going over this beautiful chapter, and to me this entire chapter has so much relevance to our day-to-day living, and there's just not one point but so many for us to kind of remember at every point in our day-to-day lives, as well as all the actions that we perform, in how it should be done, as well as during this time of a pandemic, to put it all into perspective and to understand that that whole concept about the yajna spirit, and how we are also interconnected and cannot just, focus on just our own self and our own family. Such, powerful messages throughout this whole chapter and all the shlokas. And
Yes.
your summary was absolutely spectacular. So really, you helped connect all the different things. So thank you so much. Really
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. You're welcome. And by the way, if anybody wants a copy of this presentation, I can send it as a PDF. I have a Google Drive, and unfortunately, I've not been populating the Google Drive. I completely forgot about it, actually. But this summary part of it, if anybody wants, let me know. I can send it to you or put it in the Google Drive and you can download it.
Yes, Sunitha ji, I would like to have the summary.
Sure. Definitely, Jayashri, I will send it to you especially. Yeah.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
me too. Yeah, you can please send the summary.
Yes.
I would love to.
Sure.
Radhe, can you stop the live, please? Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Stop.